with JMU Hall of Famer and someone who knows a hell of a lot about taking it to the house.
Joyce breaks a tackle and goes in for a touchdown. Another spectacular run by Delvin Joyce.
Delvin Joyce brings his unique perspective to the podcast to break down all things he's seeing about JMU football, with a little help from EPA King Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
Here he goes. He's going to try to beat the punter. He does. He's gone. And that is a touchdown.
Welcome into To the House.
Look at him turn back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Now, here's Delvin Joyce with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
JMU Nation, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of To the House. I am your host, Delvin Joyce, the People's Choice. I am joined by my guy, Jack Fitzpatrick, a.k.a. the EPA King, a.k.a. Jay Feezy, representing the Seattle Mariners, and we coordinated the gray tonight. What's going on, Jack?
Yeah, this is all about podcasting. This is how we get down to it. You got to coordinate the colors for the video podcast portion. It's a gray day here in Richmond, so it reflects it here on the podcast.
There you go. I mean, it's a great day in Charlotte right now, too, obviously. I mean, it's raining every day. I don't know what's going on, but hey, welcome to the show. We are going to have a very, very low-key episode because we don't have a game to review. We don't have a game to preview. We're going to do the preview of the Boca Raton game next week. But, Jack, I do want to get your thoughts on the Boca Raton Bowl.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Be sure to subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network so you never miss an episode. We are your exclusive home for To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce and the JMU Sports News Podcast with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon. New episodes of To the House drop every Monday, and new episodes of the JMU Sports News Podcast drop in the middle of every week. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and YouTube so you never miss an episode.
Because as you know, it was just announced that the Dukes will be traveling to South Florida to take on Western Kentucky from Conference USA. Jack, are you excited about the Dukes going bowling?
I'm excited about them going bowling. Yes. We were talking about this off the air, and the old broadcaster's rule is don't waste the good content when the things aren't recording. And I may have wasted the good content when the things weren't recording, because I was telling you, Delvin, I don't miss the FCS playoffs per se. I don't miss all of that, but not playing for a conference championship, going down there, we'll get into it, but without AB3, this game kind of feels like, no offense to the Boca Raton Bowl, but I'm not I'll watch it. I'll consume every 60 minutes of that game, but yeah. I'm not like, oh, December 18th can't get here soon enough.
Yeah, let me ask you. So you mentioned the FCS playoffs. Who is the number one seed in the playoffs this year? FCS.
Montana?
Is it Montana?
Let me triple check that.
Who's the number one? Who's the number one seed in the CFP?
Oregon.
Okay. I mean, so
I said I don't miss it. I said I don't miss it.
You just made my point. I mean, listen, it's so bad because I spent so many years advocating for FCS football and how it matters. And honestly, man, the reality is, like, I mean, we had some great seasons, national championships, you know, by and large, nobody noticed, bro. Like, I mean, it kind of sucks that was, because now being on the other side of it, I have no idea what's happening in the FCS playoffs.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, legit no clue. Like, if you put a gun to my head, I would probably guess that Montana, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, somebody from the CAA, like, I mean, those are the only three that I would even like be able to guess are actually in those playoffs. Which sucks.
Yes, Yeah, in the finals, though, Montana State's playing Idaho, North Dakota State's playing Mercer, Incarnate Word is playing South Dakota State, and UC Davis is playing South Dakota.
Oh, wow. So I mean, they're like in week 2 of the playoffs.
They're in week 1. They're going to be playing week 3 of the playoffs. There's round 1 and then now we're in the quarterfinal round.
And by the way, I mean, and I consume a lot of college football. I thought the playoffs started like this week. Like I have no clue what's going on in FCS football, which is insane. And by the way, when we were FCS, we had no clue what was going on in Division 2 and Division 3. And so listen, I'm still excited about the move up. I'm still very excited about the fact that the Dukes get to play in the Boca Raton Bowl. And you know what? Say what you want. I mean, I do think it is a great destination bowl for JMU fans, right? Like if we're not going to be in the CFP, the second most important thing is payout, right? So like, let's get a bowl with a great payout. If we're not going to get a bowl with a phenomenal payout, let's at least go to a cool location where JMU Nation can show up and party.
Yeah.
Right. And that is Boca. So, or I'm going to say South Florida. I mean, as someone who lived there for 5 years in West Palm Beach, I know the area pretty well, and it will be a great time with good weather.
Which is big.
Where was the place you didn't want to go, Jack?
This is no shade to the great state, but any of those bowls in Alabama that were being floated, I had nothing I wanted to do even remotely close to Alabama. And I saw the famous Idaho Potato Bowl like get floated once or twice. I don't want to go to Idaho in December. So
no,
I was very much hoping it was going to be Boca Raton. Selfishly, I wanted Myrtle Beach because of proximity to Richmond, and New Orleans would have been fun.
Yeah, I mean, is the Idaho Potato Bowl, is that played in a dome?
No.
Yeah, no, that's a non-starter then. I'm sorry. Like,
oh, the winning coach does get a fry bath. So
listen, man, I mean, I'm not going to say frostbite. I'm not going to joke about frostbite. But I already sat in the cold 2 games in a row, App State and Marshall. I'm done with cold weather. And the reason I'm saying I'm not going to joke about frostbite, my wife showed me some video on Reels of some dude that got frostbite. And I've never seen frostbite. I've never seen it. We joke about it all the time, and it was not a good thing. And the guy had his fingers amputated. No longer joking about frostbite. It's brutal.
That's a good life motto.
Yeah, no longer. I mean, I'm gonna make a T-shirt. We want Joby, and then no longer joking about frostbite. But I do think the Boca Raton Bowl is a good bowl. I mean, I think the payout. It's hard to find the payout for this year, but I think the payout is somewhere between 900,000 and $1 million, which is a fairly decent bowl, right? I think last year's Armed Forces Bowl was like 1.45 million. But Lockheed Martin has deep pockets, right? And so, I mean, 1.5 million is a pretty good payout for for that type of bowl. And I also think Texas was a cool destination. I went to that game. Some of our old teammates, we rented a luxury suite at TCU Stadium, which is a very cool stadium. And we just had a great time. But I do think South Florida is also really, really cool. What do you think about Western Kentucky, a Conference USA opponent?
I think it'll be fun. I mean, Western Kentucky has been kind of this run and gun, high-powered offense the last few years. I believe they were the ones that played. Yeah, it was last year in the famous Toastery Bowl held right there at Jerry Richardson Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina, where they went into like this crazy game with ODU. That was an instant classic. I don't think anyone was watching because it happened like December 8th or something like that, very early on in bowl season. But they were part of a great bowl game last year. They just make for good bowl games. Plus, have you seen their mascot? Now, here my checklist. You said you need a good payout and a good location. I need good payout, good location, and a fun mascot. Western Kentucky's got all of that.
So they are the Hilltoppers. All right, what is a Hilltopper?
That's a great question. I'm going to pull it up. I don't think Western Kentucky knows what a Hilltopper is because this is what their mascot is, roaming the sidelines. I got to share my screen here. I feel like I'm in a Zoom meeting with this. I don't know if you're ready for this one, Delvin. I mean, this one's pretty crazy.
All right, let's see it. All right, what is that like? So it looks like a combination. For those of you listening at home, you got to Google this. This looks like this is literally the mascot version of the Cybertruck. It's like someone said we need a mascot, and some kid was like, "All right, I'm gonna draw this thing, and here you go." What is that? That's insane. That honestly looks like a cross between like Grimace and Barney and the Kool-Aid guy, right?
That is a great way to put it. I mean, this guy's just a vibe, though.
Yeah, that is pretty cool, actually. I mean, listen, it's kind of growing on me. I gotta say, it's growing on me. So you're listening at home, you're not watching the YouTube. And by the way, I don't blame you. I have a face for radio. I would Google the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers mascot. You will not be disappointed. But speaking of disappointed, we did hear the unfortunate news that came out this week that Alonzo Barnett III, AB3, will not be playing in this game because apparently he got hurt on the last offensive play in overtime when he took a sack trying to go for 2 against Marshall in that second overtime. So Jack, how disappointed are you with the fact that, the team, as it was for the year, will be without its signal caller AB3?
It's a real bummer that the Dukes will be playing in their second bowl game in program history, looking for their first, and it seemed that things were lining up for JMU to get their first bowl win. Not saying that they're now unaligned for them to get their first bowl win. The team is still very much intact. We'll talk about the transfer portal here in a minute, but it hasn't really hit JMU that hard so far. And it felt like everything was going well going into the game. AB3 missing it is going to be pretty tough, considering he really didn't miss many snaps throughout the regular season. They didn't have to lean upon a lot of their backups. And what kind of makes matters worse is Dylan Morris, the team's backup, underwent arm surgery on his throwing arm immediately after the season ended. So the number 1 and presumably number 2 quarterback will be out for this game.
Yeah, and that really, I mean, that's like insult to injury. That's like injury on top of injury. So really feel bad for AB3 because the kid played his heart out. I thought he had a great season this year. Really looking forward to what he's going to be able to do coming back next season. The real question is, how serious is the injury? I mean, they're keeping it super mum. So we have no idea. I went back and watched. It looked like he kind of hobbled off the field. So I'm guessing it's some sort of leg injury or lower body injury. But they haven't really said anything. Like, have you heard anything definitively about what the injury actually is?
No, I've heard nothing definitively, and walking off, it makes you feel a little good about it, but my mind goes back to the Jalen Green injury at Georgia State last year when he, I believe, tore his ACL and MCL.
Yeah.
Walked off the field under his own power, kind of cheered to the fans in attendance, and I thought everything was going to be okay. But adrenaline is a crazy thing. It can make you do things you never thought your body could do. I'm hoping that it's nothing too serious, and that AB3 will be good to go for the season opener next year.
Yeah, and I think a very interesting revelation in all of this is the fact that Dylan Morris appears to have been injured throughout the season as well. And so, just very curious how all that sort of played into the decision making around the starting job. I mean, I just don't know. I thought AB3 played phenomenally. I would say that he probably still earned that job, but very interesting that Dylan Morris also has an injury that required surgery at the end of the season.
Yeah, 1000%. And an interesting wrinkle to this that I will be keeping my ear to the ground about. How quickly can he get through his rehab and be ready to start taking hits and practicing with the team around spring ball, and more specifically around the summer camps heading into fall season? Because if JMU, which I think is likely, they're going to bring in a transfer quarterback, how healthy will Alonzo be to compete against him, and how open will that competition actually be next year? Is it Alonzo's job no matter what? Is there going to be a real competition, and how does his injury play into all of that?
Yeah, that's going to be something to watch. But what Chesney said today is that the starter this week is going to be Billy Atkins the fourth. So we go from AB3, we switch those letters around, and it's BA4, right? Who's going to be starting? But he said that BA4 has been the backup for most of the season. And so I think that is a positive that we can all take going into this Boca Raton Bowl. The fact that the guy has been the backup, that means that he's gotten the second most snaps in practice. He's getting a lot of good quality reps. And by all accounts, the guy was preparing as if he was the starter, right? Which is obviously the role of the backup. But the last time we actually saw BA4 make a start, man, it was rough, man. That was a rough one.
That wasn't a good game. And I'm really glad JMU values their two deeps in the season by putting Dylan Morris as the backup quarterback the whole year when it was actually Billy Atkins. I'm really glad that the two deeps are valued that much inside the walls of James Madison.
Yeah, I know. So Billy Atkins, I mean, obviously he had a really rough outing. So Todd Centeio goes down. I think it was the Georgia Southern game.
Yep.
That was a loss in 2022. BA4 starts the game. And starts really good. I don't know if you remember, we go up, I think 10-0 in that game.
I don't. People have told me this, and I'm like, I think I blocked that entire game out of my memory.
Oh, I totally blocked it. We go up, I think 10-0. He throws like a 17-yard touchdown pass to Zach Horton. And we're like, yo, Billy Atkins the fourth is cooking. And then somehow the wheels fall off the train. He throws 4 interceptions in that game. We lose the game. I think it was like 26-12. And that was right in the middle of a 3-game losing streak. And, his performance was like so bad that the next week against Louisville, the coaching staff just said, you know what, we're going to throw Todd Centeio out there, let him play hurt. And we're not even going to throw the ball. We're just going to turtle the entire game. By the way, I stole turtle from you guys. But we're just going to turtle the entire game and just collect our check and get back to Harrisonburg.
Man, that was a tough time in JMU football lore.
Yeah, that was brutal. But I got to say, man, I mean, I love the fact that BA4, who is a senior, who is a kid that came to JMU with a lot of promise, stayed the entire 5 years, right? You got to give him credit for that, because the guy probably could transfer, go to an FCS team and start right away, or maybe even have a shot at some other G5, right? So got to give the guy props for doing that. Because remember, he came to JMU as an FCS kid. Like he didn't come here thinking, hey, I'm an FBS quarterback, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I'm an FCS guy. And he stuck it out. He probably could have bounced, gone and played at Stony Brook or something and had a really nice career. So I love the fact that this kid stayed here and stayed committed to the Dukes. I also got a chance to meet him this summer and spend some time with him, talk to him after I got a chance to talk to the team. And man, he is a very, very good, cool, like smart young man. We talked about career and all these things. And like, I really he's a guy that you gotta root for. And if Billy Atkins the fourth can go down to Boca Raton, Florida and ball out in this Boca Raton Bowl, I got to tell you, man, we talk about the AB3 redemption story after getting, benched last year at the beginning of the season. I got to tell you something. If Billy Atkins the fourth wins this game, that will be the second best redemption story of this entire football season. So what do you think? You think he's got it?
I hope so, man. If he goes out there with 300 plus, a couple tutties, doesn't really turn the ball over and looks poised in the pocket, I mean, he may never be buying a beer in Harrisonburg again. I mean, he has the potential to go down as like a historical, this almost like just mythical guy. We're gonna be if he wins this bowl game, goes out and throws 350 with 4 touchdowns. We're gonna be like, remember that Billy Atkins game against Western Kentucky in December of 2024? What a weird game. Good for that guy. That guy helped JMU get their first bowl game win. Does he have it in him? Maybe. Does he not have it in him? Maybe. I don't know. We haven't seen him play since 2022. So I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, man. And you said it, bro. He's got a chance to make history. Like, I mean, whatever happens, if we win this game, he is the winning quarterback in JMU's first ever bowl game. I mean, that's
big.
That's a big thing. Now, we also have a couple of kids from Florida playing the quarterback position that are on the roster right now. So it's kind of a homecoming for them. Of course, JC Evans is from Miami. And so, it sounds like he's going to have a package. Now, I don't know if you remember what his package looked like during the season. JC left, JC right. But it sounds like he's probably going to have some sort of package because this game will not impact his red shirt. So his red shirt is preserved. I would imagine he's going to have a big, family support in that stadium. And so it's going to be really cool to see him go out and see what he can do. Right. Now, if for some reason he ends up playing a pretty good amount of snaps in this game and actually balls out, then you know what's going to happen, Jack? QB controversy, right? For next season.
Big time.
So, and then Blake Kendall is also from South Florida. He's from, I think, Wellington, Florida. And so, I know a lot of people don't know a lot about Blake Kendall because I think he's kind of a walk-on. I know he plays baseball too, but maybe one of the better athletes on this team. And if you listen to Coach Chesney talk about this kid, and if you watch those post-game awards that they do, he wins the quote-unquote confidence award, which is awarded to the scout team sort of player of the week every week, because the guy apparently is able to give them, opposing quarterback looks that they actually need that helps the defense go out and play pretty well on Saturdays. So, I would not be surprised if he got a chance to take some snaps in front of his home crowd, being that he's going back home. And I also believe he's a very, very capable young man. It's just that we've got a very, very deep quarterback room. Now, if we were to talk about, I guess, the transfer portal, I do want to talk transfer portal for a second. And I want to start with, the quarterback room for a second, because we've got, there's another quarterback that was in that room. And we haven't talked about him at all on this podcast. I don't think we've mentioned his name, but I also haven't seen him on the sideline or I have known nothing about where this kid is. So the kid that transferred, Brett Griffiths, right, from Wake Forest, what is the lowdown on him?
I think it's the end of the season. I can say what I saw in preseason practice now at this point. He had an injured arm.
Okay.
His arm was in a cast preseason. So I imagine he suffered some sort of serious arm injury that required surgery and required a longer bit of rehab. So I would imagine he likely did not travel with the team this year. He didn't take up a travel roster spot. I also, though, did not see him on the sidelines with the team, but he's still listed on the team's roster. He didn't enter the portal today. We're recording on December 9th, a Monday. The portal technically opened today, so he could have technically entered it. Technically is going to hold a lot of weight in today's episode when talking about the transfer portal. But he had an injury that he was rehabbing through this season, so that may have played a role in his lack of or I guess his absence from the sideline.
Interesting. Yeah, I have no idea. I just, as we were talking transfer portal, he was the first name that came up because we were talking about the quarterback room.
Yeah.
But of course, you just said it, December 9th. Today, the transfer portal opens up. We got to get another name for transfer portal. Like, portal is something that, like, takes you to another dimension, right? Like, I mean, it just sounds so absolute to me. It's like, oh, you're going into the portal, you're gone.
Yeah.
By the way, give me a backup name for portal. You're a journalist. Come on. What's another name?
The transfer spreadsheet. The database of kids looking for a new home.
The transfer database. There we go. I mean, that's so much. I don't know what it like. Portal, it just sounds like you're like
who thought of that name? That is such a weird name.
It's such a weird name, right? I just feel like there's some other name that we could have called it. But either way, the portal is open. And I know there's a couple of kids that have gone into the portal from JMU. Apparently, they had conversations with Coach Chesney right after the Marshall game. But by all accounts, they are They are players that have not really played a meaningful role on this team. And it appears, and by the way, I know anything can happen, but it appears that this team is largely going to stay intact, right? We're not going to see the mass exodus that we saw last season. And obviously for good reason, because we're retaining our coach. So Jack, I know that you and this JMU Sports News team, you guys do a lot of investigative research. So what do you got on the transfer portal? Who are the names and what are the implications for the Dukes at this point?
Yeah, Bennett has been living on Twitter today, and I'm very, very impressed by him. You mentioned it, Maxwell Moss and what was it, Martin, I believe his last name was, were the two wide receiver entries. Jesse Ramil did enter the left tackle. He entered the transfer portal today. Probably the biggest name to enter the transfer portal from JMU side. And then there's a report from Chris Hummer of 247 Sports that Daryl Dengois is going to enter the portal as well. So those two are kind of the biggest losses as of right now. Ramil, of course, played nearly every snap at left tackle. Dengois flashed, the redshirt freshman. I believe he was a redshirt freshman. Yeah, redshirt freshman flashed when he saw his way onto the field. Was expected to be a bigger piece of that defensive line next year, but he'll enter the transfer portal as well. But other than that, you know, some of the big names that we've been really worried about today, Eric O'Neill, he has not entered the transfer portal. George Pettaway has not entered the transfer portal. Iowa Day, I know that's a name we haven't heard a lot about, but with the great success that you saw out of Joby and the great success you saw out of Wayne Knight and Pettaway, you could expect maybe one of those guys in the running back room to have entered their name into the portal today. Joby stays as well. They had no movement from the running back room. So far, we'll see. And JMU, the one thing that really stuck out to me so far early on in the portal, they've been offering a ton of offensive linemen, which makes sense since they're going to lose Tanner Morris. You've now lost Ramil, your starting left tackle. Pat McMurtry's gone, who was your starting right tackle. Cole Potts is gone. Really, the only returners you have as of right now, when you look across the line, is Joseph Simmons, a rotational guy. You have Josh Toner, who played a good amount of snaps at guard position. And you have Riley Robel, who will be working back from an injury. And that might be it of the guys. I may be leaving out one really obvious one, but that's it of the guys who played a ton of snaps. And Tyshawn Wyatt didn't play a single snap all year. The all-conference, preseason all-conference left tackle does have another year of eligibility. Worth being noted, though, he did enter the transfer portal last year when Signetti left. I imagine the injury is a big reason why he decided to come back. So he may test the transfer market again.
Yeah. All right. So that's very interesting. So very disappointing about Ramil and Dengoy. Like I thought, I think both of those guys are great players. They're gonna, could have some big roles for JMU. I guess, how much of it is I'm not going to enter my name into this transfer portal, because once you go into the portal, you have essentially forfeited your scholarship.
Yes.
Right. And so I'm not going into the portal unless I know I got a deal and a home somewhere else. Is that right?
I would, for some of these guys, I would say, yeah.
Yeah. So, because I mean, listen, you could go in the portal because right, that portal, that thing that's spinning, like that big circle is like a black hole. You could go in there, and if no one signs you, now you've given up your scholarship at JMU, and there's no guarantee that Bob Chesney is going to say, all right, you know what? Come on back. We got you. Right. So listen, I take a lot of, I guess, comfort in not seeing a bunch of names going into the portal today. That does not mean that there's not some back office deals that are happening. And guys are just waiting for a phone call and trying to finalize some things before they actually hop in. Like, do you think there's some of that going on?
Yeah, I do. Because there's some really talented players on our roster that probably can command. And if you're listening to this, if you're one of those talented players on the roster, turn the podcast off now. I don't want you to hear how great you actually are, because I'd love to see you in a JMU uniform next year. But there's so many guys on this roster. The Eric O'Neills, who are one of the best defensive linemen in the entire country, not just G5. Pettaway, who there's a reason he was playing at UNC and just had to transfer because he wasn't getting play time behind Omarion Hampton. There are these guys on this team that have the capability to make that P4 jump and be a big contributor at a P4 and probably make six figures. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I hope the players are smart. I hope they're getting actual contracts or kind of things signed and they don't fall into the same trap that I think it was Tulsa had kind of promised all of this to their entire team and didn't come through with any of it. UNLV screwed over Matthew Sluka. So I hope they're getting their I's dotted, their T's crossed before they enter the portal. I hope they're not entering the portal, though. I do not hope that.
No, and by the way, I mean, I also believe that there's a lot of fool's gold out there, man. There's a lot of iron pyrite. Like I don't believe, we hear these NIL deals, and I feel like everyone believes it's like everybody's making $100,000. I don't believe that's the case. I mean, I got to be honest, and like I kind of compare it to like the NFL. Everybody's like, oh, you're in the NFL, you're a millionaire, bro. My rookie year in the NFL, I made $225,000. That's no money, if you ask me, right? In New York City, you're almost broke at 225. And so I feel like there's a lot of that too. And so you got to ask yourself, if you're one of these kids, you got a great situation at JMU, you're going to get a great education. You got friends on campus. Hopefully you have a girlfriend on campus. You've got that you understand the coaching staff and what they're about. There's no surprises. Am I going to go in the portal for $30K? Right? Like, I don't know that there's a whole lot of $100,000 deals out there for like interior linemen.
Yeah. And I don't know for a fact, how much money the Montpelier Collective has. I don't know what their bankroll is, but I'm fairly certain that a number of these guys are going to be offered some sort of deal with the collective. So it's not like don't get paid at JMU or go make 30,000 at, Memphis. It's, do you want to get paid 20,000 by JMU or whatever that number is? I have no clue. Do you want to get paid this amount by JMU and get paid and play a game you love around your teammates? Or do you want to make $10,000 more and move and not have it necessarily fully guaranteed and all of these other extenuating circumstances? I do think, though, the issue is like with the top of the roster, like an Eric O'Neal, I think can command six figures. And that's when it gets a little hazy. I think Petaway could as well, with a coach that maybe decides to run him more than 13 times a game.
Maybe,
but it's also a running back. No offense to your position, Delvin, but running backs just are very undervalued. And
we're a dime a dozen.
So, so it is tough though. Like you gotta factor all of that in. And I do think there's some top end guys on JMU's roster that can command that six figures. But
yeah,
Daryl Dengoy, were you promised a lot and you probably could have stayed at JMU for 10 grand? And are you leaving for 50 grand? By all means, your prerogative. Please do. Go make your money, go profit on your name, image, and likeness. But at the same time, I think there are some things you got to kind of have to weigh in.
No, listen, I think Dengoy, with the role that he played on our team this past year, I mean, he didn't play a significant role, and he flashed at times. He made some plays. I can't say that guy is leaving for money. There is some other draw that is taking him somewhere else. I don't know if it's like, I want to be closer to family, personal reasons. There is something other than money, because he's not the money guy on that defensive line. Like, right? Like, I'm going to give the money to Emmanuel Bush or Eric O'Neal. It's probably, and no shade to Dengoy, it's probably not going to be Dengoy.
Yeah.
Right. And, when I think about last year, right, we lost 16 players, I guess. All right. I guess Carter went to Louisiana Monroe.
He's back in the portal.
He's back in the portal. He's probably come back to JMU. Does the portal work that way? Can you go out and come back in and come back?
You could if your coach wants you.
You can't even leave a JMU football game and come back in. How's he? This guy's not gonna come back in the portal.
RMC is gonna stop him.
So yeah, but McLeod was the guy that, hey, I'm going to go get a bag. I'm Sunbelt Player of the Year. I had this amazing season. Go get a bag. Unfortunately, there was no bag to be had. He ends up at Texas State. But, when you look at the other guys that left, the guys that went with Cignetti, right? This is what I wanted to talk about. because you mentioned Eric O'Neal, and I agree. I think Eric O'Neal is an NFL caliber player. But here's the challenge. That portal is full of talented defensive ends. And what set some of those kids apart last year that went to Indiana is that they had a coaching staff that watched them every single day in practice. And there's a whole different level of intimacy in terms of recruiting a player, evaluating talent when you've gotten to see them every single day. And to your point, unfortunately, if Eric O'Neal goes into the portal, which I do not believe he will, but if he did go into the portal, I mean, he's competing against a bunch of other kids. And I just don't know. I mean, I think his film speaks for itself, but it's not the same as like Cignetti evaluating his players every single day in practice last year. Right. So I think some of those kids that left and went to Indiana, if they had not left to go be with Cignetti, I don't know that they get picked up by Big Ten, a Big Ten football program. I don't know that happens.
I also don't know if they leave, right? Like, I think so much of that is like you are where you are, you're successful where you're successful, and the opportunity presented itself. Like, Elijah Surratt probably leaves, but D'Angelo Pons doesn't. D'Angelo Pons was with JMU through the spring season, and then he left late. I don't know if Jalen Walker and Aiden Fisher leave if Kurt Cignetti stays. So I think there is that too, where you have that coaching continuity now year over year, that I think a lot of the players who may be able to get bigger bags than what JMU can offer will prefer to stay. And I think Eric O'Neal and some of these other guys that have NFL quality to them will see what Mike Green does in the NFL draft this year. The Marshall defensive lineman will likely be a first-round draft pick, if not a first-round draft pick, a very early second-round draft pick. And the players can see, oh, I can just ball out here in the Sun Belt, and NFL scouts will notice if I do my job. Like, if I have 2 or 3 great years at this level, like, oh, I can parlay that into a lucrative rookie contract at the NFL level. I don't have to go to Purdue for a year and play in the Big Ten and hate my life in West Lafayette, Indiana. I can stay here and ball out.
Yeah, that is a fantastic point, man. I mean, I was scouring social media today, and I saw a quote from Coach Prime, Coach Dion. And Coach Prime, I put him on What You Talking About, Willis, a few weeks back. Man, I'm going to give this guy props for something that he said that I thought made a lot of sense. And this is what Coach Prime said. He said, to many of the portal young men that's looking and searching for the right situation, you're going to get vetted thoroughly by us. And then I pray you know the difference of being offered a bag and being offered a blessing. Ask Grandma Nim what I mean, right? And so like I love what he says. Like, you got to know the difference between being offered a bag and being offered a blessing. And that blessing, man, is just opportunity to play in a great program around great people. Money is not everything. And I hope that, the message that we're sending to these kids with NIL and transfer portal and this system of unrestricted annual free agency that we have with no salary caps is not teaching these kids that the bag is more important than the blessing. So I got to give Coach Prime props for saying that. Now, for me, though, the transfer portal is kind of like the dry cleaners. I mean, listen, you're going to win some, you're going to get some, right? You're going to lose some, you're going to get some. But so you mentioned earlier that we have offered a bunch of offensive linemen. Where do I see that?
So you can check that out. I don't know if you meant for the plug to come in naturally here, but it's all out at our transfer portal tracker on jmusportsnews.com. It's pinned right up to the top. You can check it out. You can also follow at Duke's Recruits on Twitter, and Bennett and myself, mostly Bennett, because that dude just lives and breathes for this time of year, is just quote tweeting every single offer he sees out there that JMU has given and is breaking it down. So just a quick couple of ones. JMU has offered, and they are going to bring Lexington Chick-fil-A Matthews on campus for a visit next week. He's a Savannah State punter who had 10 punts over 50 yards and had a season long of 70. So JMU looking to
His name is Chick-fil-A.
His
He calls
nickname,
himself Chick-fil-A.
his nickname's Chick-fil-A.
That's better than Waffle House or Elijah Surratt. Like I gotta give him props.
Chick-fil-A. He's only kicking on Saturday, so I don't have to worry about him kicking on Sundays. He might have to rethink that nickname if he wants to make it to the NFL. An interior defensive lineman, an interior offensive lineman from right here in Richmond, Virginia, former Spider, Parker Mitchell, played 745 snaps for the Spiders this season, was a really good right tackle. Another offensive lineman, interior / left tackle type of guy, a tight end, trying to scroll through, a running back from Penn, a wide receiver from Limestone, a wide receiver from Campbell, just a little bit of everything. They've been very active since the portal opened today.
And it just opened today. And none of these people have committed yet, right? This is just preliminary kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So JMU doesn't have, the bag to lure a kid into the portal and be like, come here. And then the second they enter the portal, they magically have made this decision, like we saw with so many JMU kids last year going to Indiana.
Yeah.
So for the kids JMU's going after, we probably won't see commitments for probably a little bit coming out of all of these offers. Like Eric O'Neal, I think, was offered pretty immediately once he got into the portal, but he didn't commit for like another week or two. Yeah. So I'd expect to see that. They're just going to weigh all their options.
Well, I'm going to go back to this. I love it, man. There's so many talented kids, and never fear, JMU Nation. There are still going to be some names of some of your favorite players that are going to go into the transfer portal. And the reality is there are going to be some of your favorite players next year that you've never heard of that came from freaking Campbell or somewhere, and they're going to be absolute ballers. So again, think of it like the dry cleaners. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but overall, it really comes down to our coach's ability to evaluate talent and then get the best out of that talent on the field as a unit. So I did see, by the way, that Caden Salter, the Liberty quarterback, entered the transfer portal, and apparently he's looking at a bunch of ACC schools and SEC schools.
We'll see, kid.
We'll see. That's got some big ramifications for that matchup in Lynchburg next year, because he's their guy.
Yeah.
And just one last note. I mean, George Pettaway, one of my favorite players, of course. I got a chance to meet his dad after a game in some restaurant. I met you guys.
What was it? Tiki Wings, the old Quaker Steak and Lube over there across the street from Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, what game was that?
The Georgia State game.
The Georgia State game, yes. So I went and introduced myself to his dad, because there's like this table of people. They're all wearing Pettaway jerseys. I'm like, either those people went to the University Outpost and saw the George Pettaway NIL shrine and just racked up, or they got to be related. I told his dad, I was like, man, I really enjoy watching his son play. We got to keep him here. And he was like, he went on and on about how much George likes Harrisonburg and likes JMU. So fingers crossed. I do think that we got that kid on our roster again next year. All right. So let's talk about, obviously we just signed a bunch of high school kids. So I think it was reported that we had 15 kids out of high school that signed. I listened to Chesney's press conference around signing day, and he just talked about how high school recruiting now is so much different, because you can't really go out and recruit a bunch of high school kids at this point and sign them, because you don't know, you got kids graduating off your roster. You have no idea how many of your players are going to leave and go into the transfer portal. And so you kind of need some of those roster spots to go out and backfill some of those spots that you maybe lost with upperclassmen. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with a bunch of freshmen trying to fill meaningful positions on the field. So any thoughts, I guess, real quick on the high school recruiting class? Looks like, 15 kids, and we know nothing about them.
And every time you turn on their film, their huddle, of course, it's going to look amazing, because they're sharing their highlights, and they're a kid going to a top tier group of 5 school, which means they probably were the best player on the field in their 3A football game on a Friday against some other random high school in the middle of Virginia.
Right.
JMU did focus on the offensive line a good bit in this one as well. Got 3 offensive linemen, Parker Cunningham, Trent Wilson, JD Rayner, all should be vying at one point in their JMU careers to get some time on the field. But I wanted to throw this question to you because you see a smaller class than necessarily normal, 14. The transfer portal, you don't really know what's going to happen, where everything stands. So you have a hard cap this year at 105. That really changes the landscape of a lot of things going into this, whether it's recruiting these high schoolers, whether it's these transfer kids you want to bring in. But more importantly, it impacts the walk-ons. You used to have the preferred walk-ons or even the open tryouts, and you'd bring in a kid or two from the school's general population who may have shown flashes and been great. And you got your collegiate career started as a walk-on, and now that might be taken away from the overall general landscape with this hard cap at 105. I just want to know kind of your thoughts on that ever-changing portion of college roster management.
Yeah, I don't understand the rule. Like, I don't understand why they're capping it. And like, if I had 20 kids that wanted to come out and be practice dummies, why can't I have 20 kids that want to come out and be practice dummies? My school is paying for it. And to your point, my career probably doesn't exist with a roster limit of 105 because I would have never gotten the opportunity because I wasn't even a recruited walk-on. Right? Like, I was unrecruited, uninvited. I applied as a regular student and showed up on the first day of school and said, hey, I want to play football. And so I think it's really unfortunate. I think what you're going to see happen, though, is the FBS kids who were sort of fringe players who probably could have gotten an offer at the FCS level, but decided to walk on at FBS. Those kids now are going to have to go down to FCS and prove it, and then come into the transfer portal and hopefully make it to FBS at some point. Then you're also going to see the kids that are fringe FCS players. I don't think it impacts FCS, right? But a lot of those players now are going to get pushed down to Division II because some of those fringe FCS players or FBS players are going to drop down to FCS. So I just think there is this trickle-down effect. But the kids that are going to get hurt the worst are those high school players, man. I mean, nobody's recruiting high school kids anymore. And I'm looking at, on I follow this account on Instagram called, I think it's @Transfer Portal. And literally every 2 seconds, there's some big time athlete from SEC, ACC school going into the transfer portal. And if I'm Alabama and I got to win next year, I'm probably not taking some kid out of high school. I'm probably not taking some, FCS kid in the transfer portal. I'm going to get the ACC's player of the year and bringing him to Alabama. Right?
Yeah. Which is a real bummer because you're cutting out kind of these stories. I know there's the Rudy story and everything, but across so many different college programs, you have the stories of the walk-on who stepped up in a big way, and whether it was for one game, one play, or an entire career, you're going to be losing that. And that feels like it isn't the fabric, but it is a fabric. It's one of the fabrics that makes up the entire blanket that is college football. And we're losing that with all of this.
Yeah, I think we're losing it. And was Rudy a great, where do you put Rudy in your top 5 football movies of all time? Like, where is Rudy?
I don't think it makes it.
Really? All right. Now I'm curious. Top 5, no particular order.
Top 5, just pure football movies, right?
Just pure football, yeah. All right, give me 3.
Remember the Titans, definitely one.
Definitely. In the top 3. I wouldn't say number 1.
No, it's number 1 for me. I respect it, though. I respect you saying not number 1. Blindside, up there in the top 3. Don't know if that's number 2. I liked Invincible. Invincible was pretty good.
Bro, all right. You just lost all credibility because you did not say, by the way, there's 2 football movies that are all-time greats. And I'm going to say the one that you can't miss is The Program.
I've never even heard of that.
Oh my God. Oh, all right.
The Program?
Where's Bennett?
I'm Googling this.
You're out of here, man. Bennett, you've been elevated to the house.
It's another one. The Longest Yard, pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the
Okay,
new
the
one
program, 1993. Okay, all right. I'll
bro,
have to watch this. Is
hey,
that
hey,
Jay
we're not gonna talk anymore until you watch the program.
Halle
All right?
Berry? Wow, James
Yeah,
Caan, Omar
yeah,
Epps.
yeah. I mean, thank you.
Wow.
I mean, you're welcome
How have
because
I not
you
heard of this movie?
that's what I'm asking. That's right. You're like 26. You weren't born when this movie came out.
I was not, no.
Yeah. All right. Now I take back everything I just said. I feel bad. But no, the program is amazing. And then I would even say like Varsity Blues, man. I mean, is a high school football movie. That was a very well done, captured the essence of high school football. I thought it was a really good movie. Any
Yeah,
given Sunday, garbage.
uh, what's this might ruffle some Sunbelt fan feathers. What's one of the worst football movies I've ever watched in my entire life?
We Are Marshall.
Yes, it is horrible. The story,
Yeah.
super sad, great story,
Yeah.
awesome story of resilience. That movie is the worst football movie ever put on
Yeah.
this planet.
It wasn't great. It wasn't great. What a story. But yeah, you're right. It was not a well done movie. All right. Well, Jack, you know what time it is, man. It's everybody's favorite segment. It's not time for news or snooze because this is not the JMU Sports News podcast. It is time for What You Talking About, Willis.
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
All right. So this week's What You Talking About, Willis, man, comes from Alabama athletic director Greg Byrne. Is it Byrne or Byrne? How do you pronounce that? Byrne?
I'd say burn.
Yeah, I think it's Greg Byrne. Obviously the committee decided to put SMU in the 12-team college football playoff. It came down what most people are assuming, because we don't know who it came down to, but most people are assuming it came down to either SMU or Alabama. And after the decision was made, their AD, Greg Byrne, goes online and says, with this outcome, we will need to assess how many P4 non-conference games make sense in the future to put us in the best position to participate in the CFP. Greg Byrne, what you talking about, Willis? Like, what is he talking about? I have no idea what he's talking about. So essentially what he's saying is that if we play a very competitive out-of-conference schedule, that is going to lower our chances of getting into the CFP because strength of schedule doesn't matter. Now, he is saying this as Alabama is coming off possibly the weakest out-of-conference schedule of any SEC team. So here's who they played in non-conference, out-of-conference matchups this year. They played FCS Mercer. They played Western Kentucky, our bowl opponent, apparently. They played South Florida, and they played Wisconsin. And they won those games collectively like 95-24, right? So his argument for why they did not get into the college football playoff hinges on the fact that I don't know what he's talking about. You're not in the college football playoff, my guy, because you lost to Vanderbilt and you lost to Oklahoma and you lost to who is the third one they lost to?
Who was it? Oklahoma. They lost to Oklahoma, Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee. And by the way, Tennessee was probably your best loss. You lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Georgia State. Georgia State lost to JMU.
Therefore, we beat Alabama.
Yes. And you lost to a bad Oklahoma team. In fact, you got boat raced, embarrassed by a bad 5-7 Oklahoma team. So I just don't understand what the logic is there. But anyway.
Maybe he's saying that they need to schedule a tougher out of conference schedule so that when they have those 3 losses in conference play, it's bolstered. This isn't what he was saying at all. He's just he's a whiny little loser that plays in the SEC, and Commissioner Sankey couldn't pull the levers of power to get his precious Crimson Tide in.
Yeah.
But, maybe if you had a better non-conference schedule and you were playing, AP top 25 preseason ranked teams in your non-conference and you won all of them and then you lost your 3 conference games, then you would have made it over SMU. Then you would have had that argument where you said, our strength of schedule is so much better. Look at what we did to start the season. But instead, you played a bunch of cupcakes. You outscored them 125-32, and the rest is history.
Yeah, bro, they played Mercer. Like, Mercer would be a cupcake FCS program for us.
Mercer scored more than Western Kentucky, and Mercer held Alabama to less points than Western Kentucky did.
Yeah, that's insane. All right, maybe I know nothing about Mercer, by the way, because I know nothing about FCS football anymore. Maybe Mercer's a powerhouse.
I think Mercer's actually in the quarterfinals of the FCS playoffs as we speak.
Oh, there you have it. What do I know? All right, what am I talking about, Willis? I have no idea. You know what? My apologies, Mercer. You guys are an absolute powerhouse.
I wasn't familiar with your game.
What'd you think about the CFP though? What'd you think about it? Like, I mean, how it all went down? Did they get it right?
People are mad about the seeding and how Oregon, the number 1 overall seed, actually got a bad draw because their second game is going to be between the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State. And I'm over that. Like it feels like they got the top 12 teams mostly right. Didn't feel like there was any like glaring omissions. I mean, Of course, leaving out JMU is a big miss. But besides that, felt like for the most part, it was fine. And I hear this all the time in March Madness and the NCAA tournament too, where like, oh, if this is a 1, you have to give them a favorable team before it. So then we have to schedule, in the case of March Madness, like that we have to give them a good 16-16 matchup in the first 4 before they play because they can't get too good of a 16 seed. Like with Oregon, they're like, oh, we gave them too good of an 8-9 draw before it. No, that's the downside of being the number 1 overall seed. You're going to play the 8 or 9 team instead of like, so what, man? You're going to like, they're the top 12 teams in the country. Of course, each one's probably going to have like a good bone in its body.
Yeah, I think what's cool about this format, I think there's 2 things for me that I like about it. Number 1, I think, with the 4-team playoff format, there were always 6 teams that felt like they should have been in it.
Yeah.
Right. And now when you got 12 teams, there's 1 team. There's going to be 1 or 2 teams every year that feel like they should be in it. But that's a far cry from 6 to 8 teams being like, hey, we would have had a chance. I think the other thing that's really cool about this bracket is that there's a ton of parity in these top 12 teams. So I know that people are like, well, Oregon's got an easier draw. We don't know that, right? I think any of these teams could get hot. Any of these teams are very capable on any given Saturday of beating the other. I don't see, there's not a Liberty in this bracket, right? Like, I mean, like, because if the college football playoff had happened last year, Liberty would have been in it, right? And they did not deserve to be there. There's no Liberty in this bracket. I think all of these games will be competitive, 1-score games. And I'm actually really, really excited about the format.
I'm pumped. It's going to be a fun finish to the season.
Let me ask you something, man, because I had somebody text me. I got a good friend. I got so many group chats and text messages where we talk about JMU football and nothing else. Like, we don't ask about family. We don't ask about your job. We talk about JMU football. And I had one of my buddies texted me and was like, after Indiana got in, and he's like, is it wrong that I'm not rooting for Indiana? Do you think that's wrong as a JMU alum, as a JMU fan, that he is not now rooting for the Fighting Curt Cignettis?
No. And at the risk of making your friend mad, who I have no idea who he is, it's not wrong, but it is a little bitter ex relationship. It is a little bitter.
Why is that? Why? Let me ask you, why would I have to root for Cignetti and that team? Why?
You don't have to. You don't have to, but
I have no ties to Indiana. I don't know. I'm just asking. I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't know anybody in Indiana. I don't know the kids on that team. Those kids don't play for JMU anymore. I rooted for them when they were JMU players. Now they're wearing crimson and cream. I don't know those kids. Why should I root for them?
That's fair. If you're saying I don't really want to root for Indiana, I get that. But if you're like, I don't wish them success, and you then have to look inward to in my opinion, look inward to yourself and be like, why don't I want them to be successful in the postseason? And it's not because they play for Indiana. It's because Curt Cignetti left us high and dry and took our best players and went and got a college football playoff ticket punch. I understand where that bitterness is coming from, and I get what you're saying, but like, we did cheer on Jalen Walker. And for me personally, Aiden Fisher played at my rival high school, so I have a little connection with that. So I connect with that, but at the end of the day, I want to see the JMU guys succeed. It's the same way that I want to see the JMU guys,
but they're not. But wait, they're not in the NFL. They're playing for no. I got to disagree, bro.
Okay.
They're playing for another college.
Okay,
like, Jack, they left your college, went to another college, and they're playing football there. And again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I do not believe that we have some sort of mandate where we've got to root for this team.
I don't think you do. I think the question though is, are you just like fine?
Yes, yes, no, I'm bitter. No, I'm just kidding. I am slightly bitter.
There are some JMU fans out there that are a lot more than slightly bitter when it comes to it. But I think at the end of the day, you don't have to root for Indiana. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you gotta, if you're like, why do I have to root for them? If that's your reaction to it, take a step back and question, why is that your reaction? Are you a little bit? And if you are, totally fine, because Curt Cignetti did get up and leave. Granted, he did take a 500% pay raise, so we can't be. I mean, there's a reason. So there's things to it. But for your friend asking in your group chat, I would tell him, look inward for a second and ask, why am I so mad at Indiana being in the playoff?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can tell you, it's hate. I mean, it is good old fashioned. And I can't, I kind of empathize with it a little bit. Like, I don't think it's anything personal against the kids. I think it's more about Cignetti. I think he became very unlikable when he left JMU. He takes a picture of that weird, he's got the JMU folder and he's like, get players. And then all of a sudden he got players. And I just feel like there's something inherently wrong when a coach leaves a school and then takes 13 players, right?
Yeah.
Take the best 5, right? Like 4 of those kids are all Big Ten, right? I think if on the all Big Ten team, Surratt and Pons and Aiden Fisher, Horton, I think, was he all Big Ten? But don't take, bro, you took 13 guys, right? Like that. I think that's wrong. And you know what? I can't even leave my company and take 13 financial advisors.
Yeah.
When the first one leaves, they're going to send me a cease and desist. And then when the other 13 leave, they're going to sue me. Right. So I just feel like there's something inherently wrong when a coach does that to a program. I think that's whack. So I told my friend, I said, listen, man, root against Cignetti. You got to wish the kids well, but it's okay, I think, to root against Cignetti because he's not very likable in the Indiana press conferences. And for what it's worth, he didn't win a championship at JMU, did he? Did he win a championship at JMU?
No, he lost.
Oh, CAA championship, right? Maybe?
Oh, he won those, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, cool. Anyway, I'm glad we got there. All right, last thing, man. I'm not going to take it to the house tonight. Let's have a little fun. I want to give you some would you rather scenarios, right? So rather than taking it to the house, we're going to come back next week when we actually preview the football game, the bowl game, and we're going to take it to the house. But tonight, Jack, I want to give you some would you rather scenarios. And I want to start with, we talk a lot about conferences. I'm just curious for you because I really value your opinion. Would you rather beat a top 10 SEC team next season, or would you rather beat a top 10 Big Ten team? Which one would you rather win?
I would rather take down a top 10 SEC team.
Yeah? Why?
Now, when you say top 10 Big Ten team, that could include Indiana, and that would feel real good to take down, going back to what we just talked about.
Yes.
But an SEC school, it just means more down there in the South, and being able to beat them with what they would view as an inferior roster. I just got wiping the smirks off of a barking grown man's face because he roots for Georgia would bring me so much joy. Going down into whatever stadium, the Swamp, whatever, it would just be very, very fun. And Big Ten, they're fun, but like the SEC, like that just feels a little bit oomph.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, App State's done both, right? They beat number 6 Texas A&M, and they beat Michigan was number 5 when they went into the Big House and beat them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a heck of an accomplishment. Let me give you. All right, what if it's like Ohio State versus like maybe South Carolina, right? In the SEC, then which one would you rather win?
The Ohio State. Like if you said like you can beat Ohio State or Michigan at their place, or you can beat South Carolina or Georgia, even then I would still be like Ohio State or Michigan.
Wow. Okay, that's very cool. But Alabama would trump all of them.
Bama would trump them, and also just like the overall top 10 SEC, just those names would probably be a lot more formidable than the top 10 from the Big Ten.
Got it. All right.
Although the Big Ten, now that I'm talking through it, I'll leave it there. I'll answer that. I got some different thoughts. That'll be for a breakout room.
No, I'm okay with it. I know we're running way longer than we said we would, but I like this theme. So like, I got to ask now. All right. So would you rather beat a top 10 Big Ten team, or not Michigan or Ohio State, or an unranked Alabama?
Probably a top 10 Big Ten, because now that I was saying it, I forgot that Oregon's in the Big Ten now. I forgot that Southern Cal is in the Big Ten now. Like, I forgot that they expanded their footprint well past the Mississippi River onto the West Coast. And some of those wins would be fun.
All right. So number 6, Wisconsin, or unranked Alabama?
Oh. Probably. Are we talking? I can't ask these. Just off the dome, I would say unranked Alabama over Wisconsin. However, a similar team that's also red, I would love to beat Nebraska.
Okay.
For our friend Tim, to see Tim's reaction and have him to deal with his emotions through that game, that would be pretty fun to watch.
Listen, man, I know I'm a maniac during football games. Tim is a maniac. And I'm not going to say his last name because he's a lawyer and he might sue me for slander. But man, that dude is a maniac during games. All right. So all right. So let's go back to the CFP. So next season, would you rather make the CFP in football or the Sweet 16 in basketball?
This is a great question. Sweet 16 in basketball. I believe the basketball has better kind of overall granted, we'll see what the college football playoff does this year, but the NCAA tournament, the money it brings to the school, the money it brings to the conference itself, you bring a lot of money in. The CAA was living off of the Final Four runs by George Mason and VCU up until like 4 years ago. Like, that money had gone a long way. So the impact you can have on your own school, the impact you can have more importantly on your conference, sets yourself up for success down the line. And you see the application spike in just like just crazy ways after those types of runs. So I would love a Sweet 16 run.
Yeah. All right. So you just gave me the AD answer. Thank you, Matt Roan. But as a fan, right?
Sweet
As
16,
a
Sweet 16.
As a fan of both programs, you'd still rather go Sweet 16?
I know this might come as like as a shock. I favor men's basketball by a very thin hair. I love college basketball. It's super fun. It's exciting. It's granted, so is college football and everything like that. And I love JMU. There's a reason I co-host 2 podcasts every week talking about JMU sports with a overemphasis on JMU football. And it's why I also host a radio show on ESPN Richmond talking JMU sports as a whole. I have a deep love for it. With that being said, as a fan, this might be TMI, but when JMU beat Wisconsin in the first round of the NCAA tournament this year,
Yeah.
I did shed a tear. I shed a tear, and it was the first JMU sporting event I think that I ever shed a tear at, because it was just like everything that we had experienced as JMU fans. I've also been through the gutter as a JMU men's basketball fan. Through the Lou Rowe era, I watched way too many games when we were winning just 4 games a year. So that's why I'd pick basketball.
Now, did you shed a tear or did you actually boo-hoo? Like, did you like, and you can be honest, man, this is a safe space.
I shed a tear. It was
like a
one
single tear?
one tear from each eye, as I had way too many brewskis at the JMU watch party in Charlotte. And that was probably the reason why a few tears were had.
That's phenomenal. I mean, it was a great moment, man. I mean, that was a big win, and it wasn't even close, which was awesome.
Then the Duke game ripped my heart out. So
did you shed a tear in the Duke game too?
when Jared McCain went up for his 6th made 3 to start the game, I was like, fuck.
Oh man, now to the house has a R rating. All right. So so just going back to what we talked about with Mercer a second ago. And I think our schedule has changed next season. We had Tennessee State, which is an FCS program, on the schedule. Now they swapped out Tennessee State for Weber State, who I think obviously a playoff foe that we faced during the FCS days. So Weber State, by all accounts, is somewhat of an FCS powerhouse. Tennessee State, not so much. Would you rather, Jack, though, as a current Sunbelt affiliate FBS program, James Madison, would you rather play a powerhouse FCS in non-conference or a cupcake FCS in non-conference?
Yes. With the history behind it, I like a powerhouse, and it just so happens to be coming off of the heels of Weber State's like worst year in over a decade. Like they are a traditional powerhouse, but they're coming off a little bit of a down year. So I guess Matt Roan and company maybe crossing their fingers a little bit that they get a Weber State on another down year and they don't have to risk the upset. But it's fun when it's like that. Now, if you just said, we want to bring in South Dakota State next year, I'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, we have no history with them. We beat them once in the playoffs. That's fine. They can stay in South Dakota. If you were like, we want to bring Montana in and we want to play them. No, it's okay. We have a little bit more history with Montana, but really it's fine. They can stay over there. Weber State, it feels like there's the recent history. I'd even accept North Dakota State because of the history and just the brawls we had with them. Although that one, I would truly worry that it would be a loss.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, I would not want to play North Dakota State I mean, there's no upside for in us. And, the playoff committee is not going to look at, I don't think they're going to look at the strength of your FCS opponent in evaluating whether or not you go to the playoff. And so I'm telling you, if I'm AD, I'm going to schedule the cupcakiest of cupcakes on the FCS on the FCS side. And our fans are not going to be excited about, having to play Campbell. But I can tell you that our coaches will appreciate it because it's kind of an extra bye week. Not really, but you know what I'm saying? Shout out Gardner Webb. But I would not risk an upset. And look how North Dakota State played Colorado this year. I mean, Colorado, Dion was not happy that game was on the schedule. And North Dakota State should have won it. So I'd rather play a cupcake all day. All right, last one, Jack. And this one is, I think, more realistic because it's not so hypothetical. But I'm curious on how you value that UNC win. So would you rather have dropped 70 on UNC in an 8-4 season, or lose that UNC game and actually go 10-2 with the other loss coming to App State? How much do you value?
I would have taken a 10-2 season with a loss at UNC. Pretty. Yeah, I'd take that pretty much in a heartbeat.
Really?
Because 10-2 means you're in contention for the Sun Belt title going into that Marshall game. 10-2 means you were a 2-loss team. You were fighting for it. Now, still having the App State loss is a bummer,
Yeah.
but 10-2, you're in it. And, the standard is the standard. I like playing for conference championships. I like going into that final game of the season with an opportunity to win a conference championship. And in this hypothetical, they would have been playing against Marshall for the Sun Belt title. Give me a 10-2 season with that loss being UNC.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one. I agree with you because I see it through the lens of being able to play for the Sun Belt Championship, and that's probably more important than the UNC win. But I'm going to tell you, man, maybe I am somewhat biased living in North Carolina. That UNC win got us a lot of play. I mean, it got us a lot of play, and it was national news. It was everywhere. It was trending every single place that weekend. And I don't know, man. I think that also plays in recruiting maybe even more than the Sun Belt Championship. Like, wow, look at James Madison came up here and just boat raced North Carolina.
Yeah. I'll be interested to talk with the recruits from this cycle as we try to nail some of them down for some interviews and ask, how does that game kind of play into your decision, or did it put JMU more on the map than it was before? Because that's an interesting point. I also will say, though, if you take out that UNC game and say you beat UVA, you beat Virginia Tech, if you put one of those two Power 4 schools in that spot, even though Tech was in a down year, UVA was in a down year. Feels like UVA has been in a down year since 1957, but that's besides the point. I would take those Power 4 wins because of the meaning it has in the state.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a good point. I think I'm just biased living in Charlotte. I see all these Carolina flags and bumper stickers and license plates, and I'm like, come on.
The play it got with Mac Brown or being forced out / retire, whatever Mac Brown did 2 weeks ago. The play it got with that, though, it revitalized, where I saw so many talking heads. I think Pat McAfee said it too on his show. He was like, yeah, he was fired when he let James Madison score 70 on him. And it's just like, we're kind of being used as the butt of the joke, but also as the butt of the Mac Brown joke, which makes us the good punchline here.
Hey, man, there's no such thing as bad press. So
exactly.
Hey, we will take it. All right, JMU Nation. Jack, you did a great job with that, man. You are very, very good at your job. So I appreciate you playing along with me. JMU Nation, I appreciate you guys hanging in with us on this Boca Raton Bowl off week. Next week, we'll be back next Monday with an actual preview of the Western Kentucky JMU game in the Boca Raton Bowl. Really looking forward to that. Jack, tell the people how they can find, follow, like, and subscribe to the House and the JMU Sports News Network.
Yeah, you can find us grinding the tape of the Hilltoppers in the film room this upcoming week, getting ready for next week's podcast. And you can also find us at JMU to the House on Instagram and Twitter. And you can subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network wherever you find good podcasts, as well as YouTube for the full-length video podcasts.
Awesome. Man, I already got my flight booked. My hotel is booked. I am going to Boca Raton. I'm excited. And next week, we're going to talk about it. So thank you, JMU Nation. Let's take one to the house. Go Dukes!
To the House is part of the JMU Sports News Network. New episodes of To the House with JMU Hall of Famer Delvin Joyce drop every Monday, and episodes of the JMU Sports News podcast drop in the middle of every week. Subscribe to the JMU Sports News Network wherever you find your podcast and never miss an episode. You can watch every episode of To the House on the JMU Sports News YouTube. Stay updated on social at JMU Sports News and at JMU To the House, and at our website, jmusportsnews.com.